Starving under alien skies, she stood in the middle of the alien market, her thin body shaking with cold and hunger. Her clothes were old and torn. Her stomach made loud sounds, but no one cared. The ground was hard under her feet, and the air was thick with smoke and noise. Strange creatures walked past her, talking in fast voices, never stopping to look. She raised her hand once to ask for food, but an alien slapped it away. Her eyes were tired. Her lips were dry. She had not eaten in 2 days. She had once lived on a warm planet, full of light and trees. Her people were kind, and her mother would sing to her at night. But war had come. Big ships had burned her home. She had run, crying, hiding, begging. When she reached this city on a new world, she thought maybe things would change. But here she was only seen as trash. The aliens called her street meat. They laughed at her, called her dirty, and sometimes threw rocks just for fun. She tried to sell small things, but no one wanted them. Then she tried to work, but no one hired her. And now she had nothing. Nothing but her clothes. As she sat under a large metal sign, she saw a vendor selling hot soup. The smell made her head spin. She walked slowly to him and asked for some. The alien looked at her, then at her clothes. He smiled in a cruel way. "You want food?" he said in a cold voice. "Give me your dress." She froze. Her face turned red with shame. She looked down at herself. It was all she had left. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But her stomach cried again. Her legs shook. She had no choice. Her fingers slowly reached to untie the fabric. The alien laughed and handed her a small bowl of soup. She held it tight, her hands shaking. She found a quiet corner and ate fast. Her eyes filled with tears as the warmth ran down her throat. That bowl of soup was her whole world. That night, she curled in a dark alley, hiding from the wind. She used a piece of plastic to cover herself. Her bones hurt from the cold ground. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but every sound made her jump. She was scared of being taken, of being hurt, of being seen. She whispered her mother's name. She whispered for help. She did not know that someone had seen her. A human man had been walking through the market. His name was Jacob. He had come to this world as a traveler, working on machines and tools. He had seen the girl from far away. He had watched how the aliens treated her, and when he saw her give away her clothes for soup, something inside him broke. He followed her quietly, keeping a safe distance. He saw where she slept. He saw her shaking. He saw her crying. He could not walk away. The next morning, the girl woke up early. Her body ached. Her mouth was dry again. She stood slowly, her feet numb. She started walking back to the market, even though she had nothing left to offer. But just then, someone stepped in front of her. She looked up and gasped. It was a human. He looked different from the others. His eyes were kind, his clothes were simple but clean. He carried a bag. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She blinked. She didn't speak. She was not used to kind voices. He opened the bag and pulled out bread, a bottle of water, and a long brown jacket. He held them out. She stared at him. Her eyes moved from the food to the jacket to his face. "Why?" she asked in a whisper. "Because you look cold," he said. She did not move at first. Then slowly, like a small bird, she reached out and took the bread. Then the water. Then the jacket. She held it close to her chest. It was warm. It smelled like old wood and oil. She wrapped it around herself. It was too big, but it made her feel safe. He smiled. "My name's Jacob." She nodded, still too scared to speak. "Do you have a name?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Laura." Jacob pointed down the street. "I have a place not far. You can rest there. No one will bother you." Laura looked around. Aliens stared. She didn't trust anyone, but something about this human felt different. Her legs felt weak. Her stomach still hurt. She had nothing to lose, so she followed him. That was the day her life started to change. She did not know yet, but she had taken the first step, from being nothing to becoming something. From pain toward hope. And the man walking beside her was about to become the most important person in her entire life. The human who didn't look away. She didn't understand why he kept coming back. Every day since that morning, Jacob brought food. Sometimes bread, sometimes warm soup in a metal flask, and always that same quiet kindness in his eyes. He never stared at her like the others did. He never asked her to smile or say thank you. He just placed the food near her and sat a few feet away, letting her choose whether to speak or stay silent. For the first time in a long time, no one demanded anything from her. Laura was still afraid. Her body was slowly healing, but her heart stayed locked behind walls built from pain and betrayal. She had been fooled before. Some aliens had offered help only to take from her later. Her voice, her strength, her dignity. So when Jacob offered his coat and asked nothing in return, she waited. Waited for the trick. Waited for the mask to drop. But it didn't. On the third day, she finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" Jacob looked at her, his face calm. Because no one else is. Simple. Honest. No hidden reason. Just a human who couldn't watch someone suffer. He offered her a place to stay again, this time more gently. "I have a workshop," he said. "You don't have to work. Just rest, stay warm, eat." She hesitated, but her body was weak, and the cold nights were getting worse. With small steps, she followed him down the street. Aliens whispered behind them. Some laughed. Some looked angry. A human with a filthy alien girl? It was not normal. The workshop was small but neat. Machines and wires filled the walls. There was a cot in the corner with a warm blanket. A kettle sat on a stove, steam rising. It smelled like oil and metal, but it was safe. Jacob showed her the bathroom and gave her a small bag with soap, toothpaste, and a comb. She stared at it like it was treasure. She hadn't seen herself in a mirror in months. Her reflection shocked her. Thin, dirty, hollow eyes. Slowly, she washed. The water stung her skin, but she didn't stop. She combed her hair, pulled on a soft shirt Jacob gave her, and stepped out with trembling hands. He had made tea. They sat across from each other in silence. He didn't ask questions. He didn't touch her. He just poured her tea and asked, "Is it okay?" She nodded. That nod was her first answer. Her first trust. Over the next days, Laura began to speak more. Just short answers at first, then full sentences. She told him about the war, about her home planet, about how she had run when the fire came from the sky. Her voice was quiet, but her eyes held storms. Jacob listened without interrupting. He fixed machines for work. He was a mechanic. Sometimes Laura watched him fix things with gentle hands. She liked the sound of tools, the way he focused. She even asked questions. And when she made a small joke by mistake, something about a machine making funny noises, Jacob laughed. It was the first time she heard him laugh. It made her chest feel warm. "I haven't heard you laugh either," he said. Laura smiled for the first time. A real smile. It was small, but it changed everything. That night, she slept deeply on the cot. For the first time in months, she didn't dream of war or hunger. She dreamed of a tree. A green tree with light shining through its leaves. She sat under it. Someone was beside her, but she couldn't see who. She was safe. But outside, trouble was growing. Some aliens had seen her entering Jacob's workshop. They didn't like it. To them, she was still just a beggar. Worthless, dirty, not allowed to stay among normal beings. They whispered, in alleys and planned in the dark. A human helping an alien girl? It was wrong in their eyes. Laura didn't know. Jacob had an idea, but he didn't tell her. He just worked harder, fixed more machines, earned more credits. He even bought her shoes, simple ones but strong. Laura touched them with awe. She had walked barefoot for so long. "Why are you so kind?" she asked one evening, while stirring soup on the stove. Jacob looked up from his tools. "You remind me of someone." "Who?" "My sister," he said quietly. "She died in a war. I couldn't help her, but maybe I can help you." Laura didn't speak. She just sat down beside him, and for the first time, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. She felt like a person again. But peace does not last long in places where kindness is rare, and the storm outside was only getting closer. Learning to breathe again. She laughed. The sound was small, soft, almost like a question. It slipped out before she could stop it. Jacob had just dropped a wrench on his foot and cursed under his breath, hopping on one leg. His face turned red, and the way he tried to act serious made her cover her mouth to hide her giggle. Jacob looked up, surprised. Was that a laugh? Laura froze, then nodded slowly. Jacob smiled. Good. That's progress. That moment stayed with her all day. She hadn't laughed since her planet fell. She hadn't even remembered how it felt. For so long, her body had only known fear, hunger, and shame. But now, in this strange little workshop filled with machines and warmth, she was starting to feel something else. Something she didn't trust yet. Safety. Each day, Jacob gave her small tasks, not because he needed her to work, but because he wanted her to grow stronger. She helped sort tools, clean engine parts, and learn simple repairs. He taught her the names of things, wires, bolts, engines. She was smart. She learned fast. Her hands became steady. She even started fixing small things on her own. Jacob treated her like a person. Not a project, not a problem, just someone who belonged. One morning she stood outside the workshop, feeling the soft light of the sun on her skin. It was the first time she didn't hide her face from the street. Her hair was brushed, her shirt was clean. She held a small screw in her hand, playing with it as she watched the aliens pass. Some still stared. Some whispered. But she didn't shrink. Inside, Jacob had fixed the heating system. The place was warmer now. Cozier. He made space for her drawings, sketches of machines, stars, and strange dreams she hadn't told him about yet. She had a corner of the workshop that felt like her own. One day, Jacob brought back a book, a learning tablet with old human stories and pictures. Laura opened it and smiled. "Can I read this?" "Take your time," Jacob said. "You've got plenty." So she did. Every night she read the stories. Simple tales, brave girls, lost boys. And each page pulled her further out of the darkness. Words gave her power. She began writing again. Secret notes, ideas, feelings. She kept them, hidden at first, unsure what they meant, but they felt like pieces of herself coming back. Jacob noticed her change, though he never said much. He just smiled when she walked taller. He nodded when she fixed something before he could. And once, he clapped softly when she greeted a customer, all by herself. Still, not everyone liked what they saw. Outside, in the deeper part of the alien city, whispers turned into plans. Some aliens believed humans should not interfere with their trash. A girl who once begged naked in the street was now walking with her head high. That made them angry. That made her dangerous. One night, as Jacob worked late, a warning came. Small alien boy, someone Laura had once given her bread to, ran into the workshop, eyes wide. "They're coming," he said. "They don't want you here anymore." Laura's heart jumped. Her hands began to shake. Jacob turned to her. "We'll be ready," he said. "You're not going back to that alley. Not while I'm still breathing." She didn't answer. But in her eyes, something had changed. She wasn't the same girl who gave up her clothes for food. She was stronger now. She wasn't just surviving. She was learning to breathe again. That night she didn't cry. She sat with Jacob, made tea, and watched the stars through the dusty window. The danger was real. The fear was still there. But now she had a name, a voice, a small corner of the world that felt like home. And in that tiny space, something powerful was beginning to grow. Hunted for being less than worthless. The first rock shattered the workshop's outer light. Laura flinched as glass rained down. Jacob jumped to his feet, pulling her behind him. Outside, shadows moved fast, dark figures with glowing eyes shouting in alien tongues. It wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a hunt. "They found us," Jacob muttered, locking the door. "They're not just angry, they want you gone." Laura's breath caught in her throat. The world outside had always hated her. She thought she'd escaped it. But now, it had come pounding at her new door. The mob outside grew louder. Metal hit walls. Footsteps circled the building. Slurs echoed through the street. Words like filth, street rat, human pet. One voice yelled, "She brings sickness." Another shouted, "Burn them both." Jacob ran to the back of the workshop. "There's a passage behind, the storage room. Hurry." Laura froze. Her body refused to move. The fear she thought she had left behind returned, colder and sharper than ever. She looked at Jacob, who was pulling boxes aside to open a hidden hatch. He turned to her. "Laura, we don't have time. You need to move. Now." Something inside her snapped. Her legs began to run. The tunnel was narrow, filled with dust and wires. Jacob led the way with a small light. Behind them, the pounding on the main door grew, louder. Screams followed, but Laura didn't look back, not once. She followed the only person who had ever seen her as more than garbage. They reached the human zone just before dawn. It was quieter here. No aliens dared cross the invisible wall that divided the city. Jacob knew someone, an old friend, who let them stay in a small storage room behind a tool shop. Laura sat on the floor, hugging her knees. Her chest rose and fell fast, her face was pale. Her hands shook again. Jacob knelt beside her. "You're safe for now." "No, I'm not," she whispered. "They'll follow. They always do." "Let them try," he said firmly. "They'll have to go through me." Laura looked at him. "Why? Why do you keep risking everything for me?" Jacob sat back and thought for a moment. "Because no one should be hunted for being poor, or for being different." She lowered her eyes. "I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm not strong, I'm not special, I'm not anything." Jacob leaned closer. "That's not true." Tears filled her eyes. She didn't want to cry again, but she did. Later that day, Jacob found a small metal chip hidden inside a pouch she kept around her neck. He asked her about it. At first, she said nothing. Then slowly, with a trembling voice, she said, "It's from my family, before the war." He waited. She pulled out the chip and stared at it. "I never told you this. I was once someone important. My parents were leaders on our planet, scientists, teachers. They died trying to save others. I was their daughter. Now I'm just nothing." Jacob didn't say anything right away. He looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet respect. "You're not nothing," he said. "You survived. That means something." Laura held the chip tight. "This may still carry my family's signal. I never used it. I was too scared." "What does it do?" "It sends a beacon," she said. "Old royal tech. If anyone from my people is still out there, they'll hear it." Jacob nodded. "Then it's time to stop running." That night, Laura stood on the roof of the human building, holding the chip to the sky. She took a deep breath. Her hand still shook. But she didn't drop it. For the first time, she pressed it. A soft blue light rose into the stars. Far across the galaxy, something heard her call. But back in the alien district, the ones who hunted her weren't done yet. They wanted her gone. And now they had a reason to strike harder than ever. She had dared to rise, and they were ready to crush her. But what they didn't know was, She wasn't the same girl anymore. I was not always trash. The stars didn't blink that night. They watched in silence as her past lit the sky. Lura sat beside the beacon receiver, eyes wide, breath held. Jacob stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her with quiet support. The soft hum of the signal chip filled the air around them, a forgotten song of royalty, a lost voice whispering across space. She's alive. For the first time, Lura wasn't hiding. She wasn't begging. She was reaching out. The next morning, everything changed. Jacob opened the door to a surprise, two strangers cloaked in black with silver pins on their chests. They weren't local. They weren't from the alien district. Their language was older, smoother. Lura stepped forward, and the taller one bowed. "Your signal was heard," he said. "Princess Lura of Renval, rightful daughter of the House of Solon, we have come to bring you home." Jacob blinked. "Princess?" Lura's hands trembled. She had not heard her full name in years. The words tasted like a dream she'd buried too deep to find again. I'm not a princess anymore," she said softly. The other stranger stepped forward. "To us, you still are. You are the last." Lura turned to Jacob. His eyes were full of questions but not judgment. "You didn't tell me," he said. "I couldn't," she whispered. "I thought it didn't matter. I thought I was trash." Jacob shook his head. "You've never been trash. Not for 1 second." Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them away. She looked at the strangers. "I won't leave him," she said firmly. "If you want me to return, he comes too." The two aliens looked at each other. "As you wish, but you must come soon. Others have heard your signal. Not all are friendly." And they were right. Back in the slums of the alien district, the leaders had discovered what Lura had done. They weren't just angry now, they were scared. A princess rising from the dirt, a symbol of rebellion, a story of hope. That was dangerous. Too dangerous. "We have to silence her," one of them said, "before the streets begin to believe she matters." Plans were made. Assassins were hired. A bounty was placed on her head. Meanwhile, Lura stood in front of a mirror inside the safe house. She wore clean robes now, borrowed from the rescuers. Her reflection showed strength she hadn't seen before. But the scars were still there. On her arms, in her heart. She turned to Jacob. "If I return to power, I don't want to rule in gold towers. I want to build homes for girls like me. Places to sleep, food, safety, dignity." Jacob nodded. "Then you're not just a princess. You're a revolution." Lura smiled faintly. "Will you help me build it?" "Always," Jacob said. They didn't know that the enemy was already moving. That night, an explosion shook the outer building. The assassins had found them. Fire spread fast. Panic followed. One of the rescuers fell. The other dragged Lura and Jacob through a hidden escape door. Smoke filled the hallways. Lura coughed, her eyes watering. But she didn't stop. She held Jacob's hand tight as they ran into the dark. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of fire. Not of being hunted, not of her past. Because now she knew the truth. She was never trash. She had just been lost, and now she was coming back. With a voice. With a purpose. With a human by her side who believed in her before she remembered who she was. The stars were no longer silent, they were listening. Rise of the forgotten girl. The galaxy didn't prepare for her return. They thought the signal was noise, just another cry from the ruins of a broken world. But then came the image. A girl in simple clothes, standing next to a human man, her eyes burning with calm fire. And behind her the crest of Renval, the ancient symbol of a royal bloodline thought to be erased forever. The message was short, clear, powerful. "You left us to die. You called me worthless, but I'm still here, and I remember everything." It was broadcast on old rebel channels, picked up by hidden satellites, echoed through encrypted networks, across distant planets and buried outposts. The forgotten people of Renval stopped what they were doing. Farmers, laborers, survivors, when they saw her face, they whispered her name. Lura. The girl who had begged for scraps was now calling an army home, but not everyone was cheering. The alien district exploded in panic. Merchants who had once kicked her away were now burning anything linked to her name. Officials issued fake stories, calling her a liar, a pretender, a trickster using stolen tech. But the truth was out, and truth spreads like wildfire. Back in 9-9, the hidden workshop, Lura didn't celebrate. She worked. She and Jacob spent hours rebuilding the damaged machines. They had moved to a safer zone now, guarded by former Renval soldiers who had returned the moment they heard her voice. She refused royal chambers. She slept near the power cables, on a mat beside Jacob, still wrapped in the jacket he gave her, when she had nothing. "You could wear jewels," one soldier said. "I prefer tools," she answered. More survivors arrived each day, wounded women, hungry children, refugees with old stories and hollow eyes. Lura met them one by one, giving food and hope, not speeches. She was not a queen who ruled from above. She walked beside them, lifting hands, not waving from balconies, and they loved her for it. Jacob became her second shadow. He fixed water lines, taught kids how to use machines, and quietly made space for Lura to lead. But one night, he watched her speak to a room of generals and couldn't help but feel the change. She wasn't the frightened girl he had found in the street anymore. She was becoming something else, something powerful. He asked her, "Are you still the same person who cried alone in that alley?" She looked at him for a long time, then said, "I'm still her. But now, she doesn't cry alone." Outside their camp, a storm gathered. A fleet of enemies led by the same syndicates who once ruled over the refugee districts, prepared for war. They wanted to crush her before she rose any higher. Ships lined up, weapons loaded. Orders were sent. Find the human. Silence the girl. But Lura didn't run. She climbed a tower, stood before a broken radio, and broadcast one final message. To those who still suffer in silence, look at me. I was nothing. I was used, forgotten, left to rot. But someone believed in me. And now, I believe in you. If they come for us, they'll find we're not alone anymore. Her words hit like thunder. The forgotten stood up. Miners laid down tools and picked up old weapons. Ship crews rebelled. Students hacked enemy systems. And deep in space, a long-lost Renval battlecruiser lit up for the first time in 20 years. The fleet was no longer coming for a runaway girl. They were coming for a leader. But Lura wasn't afraid. She had an army of the unwanted. She had truth, she had fire, and she had a human beside her ready to stand in front of the galaxy and say, "She is not trash. She is not weak. She is home. A new home, a new name." The war ended not with fire, but with a voice. When the enemy fleet surrounded her base, everyone expected panic. But Lura didn't raise weapons. She raised her words. She opened all communication lines and stood in front of the galaxy, not as a royal, not as a warrior, but as a girl who had once given away her last piece of clothing just to eat. "You can burn my body," she said calmly, "but you can't erase my story. I was called worthless, dirty, broken, but I survived, and I'm not alone anymore." Her voice echoed through every ship, every outpost, every dark corner where someone had once felt forgotten. And something miraculous happened. The fleet didn't fire. One by one, ships began to power down. Some turned around. Others opened their gates and let their prisoners go. Even those who had come to destroy her paused, confused, not by fear, but by truth. A broken girl had stood tall and reminded them what power really was. After that day, everything changed. Lura didn't take a throne. She didn't demand gold or worship. She built centers for the lost, houses for children with nowhere to sleep, clinics for the sick, training stations where anyone, no matter what planet or species, could learn a skill and build a life. She tore down the walls that had once divided the districts. The trash had become a home builder. Jacob stood beside her every step of the way. He never asked for fame. He never told the story of how he found her. But everyone knew. They whispered about the quiet human who gave his coat to a girl no one else saw. The man who believed in her before the stars remembered her name. One morning, Laura stood before a crowd. Aliens, humans, hybrids, all waiting to hear what their leader would call this new world she had created. She looked down, smiled at Jacob, then turned back to the people. "I was born Laura of Renval," she said, "but that girl died in a war. I lived as a ghost, invisible, unwanted. But now I live again, and I choose a new name." She paused. "My name is Hope." The crowd fell silent, then exploded in cheers. And from that day on, no one called her Shawik again. She walked through the rebuilt streets hand in hand with Jacob, past shops and homes and parks filled with laughter. Children ran beside her, playing without fear. Women who had once hidden in the dark now walked with light in their eyes. At the edge of the city, she visited the old alley where she had once slept. The walls were still cracked, the ground still cold. She knelt, touched the stone, and whispered, "Thank you for not letting me give up." Then she stood and walked forward, because her story wasn't just about pain, it was about rising from it, and her journey wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a world where no one would ever be called worthless again.